Who doesn't want peace? Some of us don't even pay attention to that. But when we hear peace for a little regulation, sure, where do we sign up for that? They promise things like armed assault will stop in its tracks in places like Washington State, where if they only had universal background checks. Now, who doesn't want to see that stop? So the uninformed say, well, yeah, who doesn't want that? Where do I sign up? Now, in Washington State, armed robbery didn't stop. In fact, crime continued as if the new law doesn't exist, and they don't even know how to implement it. It was and is a fantasy to think that criminals are going to obey the next gun law after criminals ignored the thousands of gun laws that came before it and are in place when they get to this point of where they are today. And unfortunately, it is easy to sell fantasies at the Washington ballot box when you have tens of millions of dollars on your side. The Washington voters, when they embraced this, they essentially said, listen, I'm going to saddle up my unicorn and take it for a spin. Are they surprised or embarrassed that the criminals aren't obeying the newest gun law, the latest gun law, the one that was brought to them by the rich people? What they do is they leave the honest gun owner. They're the victims of the new law. The victims of the crime still exist. And now we got new victims. We got victims of the new gun law. And that was the plan. That was always the plan. We're sold peace if we would only accept just one more firearms regulation. Criminals would stop using guns if we only had better firearms registration. There would be fewer victims of violent crime if we had stricter licensing of firearms. We are promised peace with every new law. And now, 20,000 plus gun laws later, there is no peace. Not in places like Washington State. Now it's harder than ever to be an honest, law-abiding firearm owner. It is harder than ever for the peaceable, for the law-abiding, for the keepers of order to protect themselves. What was learned is that disarming honest men and women only makes it easier for criminals. Even an idiot can understand that if they will simply try. Now, with 20,000 gun laws, 20,000 plus gun laws on the books, it is very easy for the police, the ones that are besieged right now, to assume that a nonviolent gun owner may have violated one of their many regulations. They just have to find it. We cannot endure the horror of a gun owner somewhere that might have an unregistered shell casing. Most police don't even know the intricacies of firearms laws. I don't know how we could possibly expect them to, as many of them as there are. Instead, they take the easy way out. They perform a no-knock raid, and then they let you sort out the problem with the judge if you survive the raid and after you get out of jail. Or in California, you have AB 1014, where you can have, your ex-girlfriend, a guy you worked with, a guy you went to school with or something. They can go to a judge and say, I think he's violent. I think he has violent tendencies. And he's a gun owner. And they will swear out a anti-gun violence restraining order against you. Come and take your guns. That's another easy way out. They'll come and take your guns. No due process. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you can get before a judge and plead your case then. Here's what I say in my new intolerant mode. Since the last 20,000 plus gun laws have not brought us peace, how about let's start repealing a few thousand of these laws that criminalize nonviolent behavior? Let's try a little more freedom. We've earned it before we pass another gun control law that is going to fail. It's not sure to fail. It's not likely to fail. It is going to fail. We really don't need a restricted gun owner strangled to death because he had an unregistered shell casing to do it. What if it's a black gun owner? Don't black lives matter? As Al Gore would say, the science is in. Gun owners are extremely honest people. They have never been the source of public violence, never going to be the source of public violence. When they are the source of public violence, it turns out to be justified in almost all the cases. Anti-gun groups that are trying to sell the next new gun law, as if that law will somehow magically stop crime, they're lying. They know they're lying because it was always designed to make it hard for you. And unfortunately for us, the casual, tolerant voters believe it time after time after time after time. And our rights of self-defense are trying to strangle those. And if you don't believe me, go to Washington State, try to buy a gun and learn to shoot. Because unless you're jumping through the right hoops, you better not touch a gun until you make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. For God's sake, don't borrow one from a law-abiding friend. Especially not if you're law-abiding, because then you just broke the law. They're always going to sell it as if we only had this. And then they come back in about 6 months and say, we didn't get enough, after just saying, if we only had this. The whole thing, it just reeks of hypocrisy all the time. I saw that President Barack Obama said the other day that under his watch, race relations have improved. If it wasn't so upsetting, it would be funny. It's like a badly written comic skit. I know that perpetrators that are going to do a home invasion don't scout. They don't scout out to find out if the homeowner they're thinking about breaking into is a gun owner. They don't ever take the time to consider, is it a good idea to burgle a place where you have a home and in it lives a vocal supporter of gun rights, and then attack them in their home. Now, coming from newsock.com, a pastor at Northwest Oklahoma City Church, who has been a vocal proponent of gun rights, has been cleared of wrongdoing in the fatal shooting of a 14-year-old boy at the pastor's home. The pastor arrived home about 3 p.m., and as he checked his house, he was attacked by the burglar who had been hiding in a closet in a back bedroom. The pastor even had signs posted outside of his house. From OklahomaSentinel.com, on December 23rd, police identified the alleged intruder as 14-year-old Keontre Reese. 14 years old, can't legally own a gun in any state here in the United States, and we got pictures of him with handguns. And money, lots of money. When he was on a mission in Africa, Pastor Vineyard's home was invaded and his skull fractured. He and his family cooperated with robbers, but that was not enough. Highly restrictive gun laws in that country prevented them from being armed. I would have to suspect that particular experience probably shaped and reinforced any Second Amendment advocacy that he had. And it is sad that a 14-year-old did not pay attention in Sunday school, if he went, and did not heed the warnings on Pastor Vineyard's house. That is sad. But there is a point in anything where your darling, if that's who it is, if it's your darling doing this, you need to pay very close attention to this. When your darling decides that they're going to invade a home, if you're aware of it, try to stop it. If you're not aware of it, don't come out bashing the home defender. Bad form on your part. I haven't heard if Keontre was a model citizen or anything, but it just makes me wonder. Let's look at 5 instances of liberals mocking gun owners via foot-in-mouth idiocy. Here's a list that came from libertyunyielding.com. This is some of the most outrageous things muttered by rabid mouth-breathing gun controllers this year. In short order, number 1, Washington, D.C. police employee claims Second Amendment was only from when the British were coming. Number 2, Hillary Clinton says gun owners terrorize the majority of people. We are the majority of people, Hillary, the adults anyway. Number 3, New York Daily News calls Second Amendment supporter a gun nut, a gun worshiper, and a zealot for winning a gun via raffle. Number 4, liberal college students sign petition to have gun owners executed. Yeah. Number 5, Vice President calls gun rights advocates teabaggers. What's really cringeworthy is if you go back and look at these instances, there'll be people nodding and smiling. Yeah. These aren't people who are looking to get guns out of the hands of the bad people. That's what everybody says. We want to keep the guns out of the hands of bad people. They want to see guns out of all hands except the ones they designate that they can have them. People cited in the above examples think that anyone with a gun is bad and therefore must be disarmed. So while they may talk a very good game about common sense, their common sense dictates that the Second Amendment be abolished. I mean, you got the Vice President of the United States marginalizing gun owners, faithfully executing their God-given right, codified by the Constitution that he took an oath to uphold, and he's marginalizing them by using offensive slang. You got college students, and you got to catch them when they're in college. You got to catch them before that first student loan payment comes due. Then I believe they begin to change. College students freely signing petitions to kill gun owners. Their parents are probably gun owners. You've got Hillary Clinton straight up lying, saying that gun owners terrorize the majority of people. And you have some dimwit D.C. employees who want to relegate the Second Amendment to the 1700s. And this, folks, is the real face of gun control. This is them in an unfiltered moment. You got to take these you got to grab onto these when you see these putting out there. When they're getting put out there, you got to grab onto them, remember them, hold them, embrace them, because this is them unfiltered. This is them really being candid with you. The presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton looks at a community 126 million strong in the U.S., the majority of adults in the U.S., and says we're the majority of adults, and she says that we terrorize the majority.
And again, I will speak out no matter what role I find myself in, but I believe that we need a more thoughtful conversation. We cannot let a minority of people, and that's what it is a minority of people, hold a viewpoint that terrorizes the majority of people.
We can't have a totally armed society.
Easy to shoot, big clips, 100+ bullets in each, large velocity guns.
I'm not a sixth grader. Senator, I've been on this committee for 20 years. I was a mayor for 9 years. I've seen the bullets that implode. This does not prohibit, you use the word prohibit, it exempts 2,271 weapons. Isn't that enough for the people in the United States? Do they need a bazooka?
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it.